Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Fret Success Guitar Show. Today we are joined by someone who works for Taylor Guitars. He's in the product development department, and his name is Terry Myers. Hi Terry, how you doing?
Hello there.
Where are you in the world?
San Diego, California, up north of it actually, along the coast. Cardiff, just not Wales.
Okay.
Cardiff, California.
You've got a drink arriving.
Yeah. Told the wife, I go, I'm going to get thirsty. Bring me something.
Thanks for coming on the show, Terry. When did you kind of get a fascination for guitars?
You know, it's that same old story you've heard a million times, and it gets kind of boring the day after the night of the Beatles. And then I was already a maniac for music before the Beatles. My parents were always yelling at me because I was always pulling the stereo apart, messing it up. So they put a lock on it so I couldn't get into it. My dad put a lock on it. But then once the Beatles came out, there was no turning back. It's like, I have to have a guitar. I have to learn how to play it. And it was all rocket ship from there.
A lot of people get involved on the guitar when the Beatles kind of stuck it out. You were originally from Detroit, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, and then, Detroit was already a super heavy music scene in the first place. Motown before the Beatles.
What were you doing out there? You were a luthier of some kind.
Out there, yeah. From the time I was a teenager, you're a guitar player, and I was always a tinkering kind of kid from the days of taking the stereos apart, and which my parents did not like. So, that leads to you start tinkering with guitars and your amps, and you want to fix things. You want to see what makes them tick. And then you just start tearing into them. And before you know it, you learn how to route, you learn how to fret, you learn how to spray finish. And largely as a teenager out of necessity, because it gets expensive paying people to do that. So one thing leads to another. And before you know it, you're a full-on luthier building guitars. And
you started in Detroit, and then obviously you've moved to California. What prompted that move?
Well, my sister and my mom moved out to California, and I was the last of the entire family left in Detroit. And I was doing well. My business was going great, but I did want to get away from winter. And they were bothering me to just come on out. So sold my house, sold my cars, and sent a ton of resumes out. I thought, I'll see what happens, and I'll go for it. And that's that's how I ended up out here.
How long did you kind of have to wait giving resumes out and until you got contacted by someone?
It was really bizarre how it happened, because I sent resumes to, a lot of bigger companies, Fender being one of them, because it's out here in California. And my sister says, we have a guitar company in San Diego. I said, really? She says, yeah. I said, well, give me an address. Tell me what it's called. And she says, Taylor Guitars. I said, never heard of them. Well, not many people heard of them at that time. So I just sent resumes out, and I thought, okay, I'll see what happens. I was kind of thinking of just getting my business going again out on my own here. But I thought, well, I could work for a guitar company maybe for a bit, help things along, get going. And I was only here 3 days, and Bob Taylor called me. Literally, I was only in San Diego 3 days, and the phone rang, and I was like, wow, that was easy. Talk about the easy button. And, and 34 years later, it's like, wow, how'd that happen? And then I had an offer to work at Fender and Yamaha's prototype department. But there was just a connection with Bob and I. There was just a connection, we really clicked. And I ended up just staying because it felt right. It was a good move.
What Was there a preference towards acoustic or electric?
I was always primarily an electric player. As a player, that was mainly my deal. And I played acoustic, because Jimmy Page and the Beatles and a lot of that stuff, even if you were into hard rock, Jimmy Page made you want to play an acoustic guitar because Zeppelin had everything from folk to the hard rock and stuff. So I was doing both, primarily electric. But then falling into the acoustic world, I was already working on them, doing repairs. I understood them really well, even when I got to Taylor. So for Bob, he really didn't have to do hardly a thing, just kind of show me how you want the guitar. Okay, good, got it. And I ran with it from there. So it was pretty natural. I wasn't an acoustic builder, but I understood it all already from working on them for years.
So how big was the company from the start when you got involved?
My memory, I remember 13 people when I got there. No more than 18. If for some reason I remember 13, and because it was just a small handful, Bob had just moved into a bigger building. First time he just went for it, went out on a limb, even though they were still only making 4 guitars a day when I met him. And then 6 guitars and then 8 guitars. So it happened, started to catch just a little. But, that's not many guitars a day.
So what is it now? How many people are there now? Do you know?
Well over probably 1,200, probably about 1,200 people now. And we're over 1,000 guitars a day. And we can't meet demand even then. But yeah, we're over 1,000 guitars a day. So pretty incredible, pretty mind-blowing.
What was product development like, Terry, in the early days? Like, what was the process?
There wasn't product development, really. It was just, at the time, it was mainly Larry Breedlove and Bob. That was product development. That's all it was. Bob would talk about something he wanted to do, and Larry would take some stabs at it, make a few. It wasn't a real sciencey thing. It was a real practical application type deal with Bob, and it always was. Because it was like, okay, this is what I want to do. Let's build a few and see if the concept in my head turns into something good. If it doesn't, we'll tweak it. But we weren't the luthiers that were standing there tapping on tops and things that you hear all the time. It was Bob had that. I'm going to go much further than that as a person. And so we're going to just figure out what works, figure out what doesn't, and we're going to start making them. And we're going to make them fast and fierce.
How did you feel about that? Was that different to how you'd run things before you joined?
No, and that was part of the reason I loved Bob and working with him, and Larry too, because having your own business for years, which I did before Taylor, time is money. For everybody in the world, it's just the way it works. Time is money. Where do you put your time to get the most out of it? And so I was already used to just being really fast, really efficient, and good at what I did at the same time. And that just fell right into Bob's thinking. So it was kind of like a perfect marriage because he was constantly trying to think of ways to, how can I do this better? How can I do it faster? How can I do it more efficient? And when I landed there, the two of us just clicked because I was already really fast, faster than the guys he had, way faster. And so he was like, wow, you're on fire, kid. And so then I started bringing more to the table because I was doing literally twice as much as the other guys. I doubled the output inside of the first 3 months. So it was like, okay, we're on a roll here. A lot of resentment towards me,
Yeah.
a lot of resentment I had to deal with because all of a sudden I wasn't trying to show anybody up, but time was money in my world that I came from. And the faster you go, the more you bring in. And then naturally it's about quality. If you don't do really good work, your fast isn't going to fly. But we were into doing really good work, and how can we do it fast with really good results? So Bob and I were like on the exact same lineage when we met.
So how has things progressed over the years to go from churning out, tens of guitars to thousands of guitars a day?
The culture of how we are and how we think hasn't changed at all. That's the interesting thing. I mean, we got here with that kind of thinking. How can we do it better? How can we do it more efficiently? How can we do it faster? But the thing with us that was different was like, how can we do it faster with better results? We weren't corner cutters, And so, and the funny thing is all these years later, with, the success that they've had, Bob still works harder than everybody. He really does. He can still outwork anybody in that place. And it's still the same thinking. I mean, every day, one of the things I do at Taylor, and part of a whole team of us, is how can we do this better? How can we do it faster? How can we make this more efficient? And it's a built-in culture. And it's the way we all think. So it just keeps growing and progressing because that's just there. It's in your head. It's what you're thinking. It's part of the culture you live in. And it's why Taylor has grown the way it has, because it all just started small and just took off and then infested, 1,000 other people. And if you want to get on the train, you have to think that way. If you want to be successful there, and if you're going to be a part of it, you have to get with that kind of thinking. And that kind of thinking is really good because young people can come in and then they have their thoughts, and occasionally they'll throw something out that's a great idea. It's like that one. Noted, And it's a good culture,
A lot of the times if you get new people on board, it's kind of, we do it this way, always has been this way. And it just seems like Taylor are always innovating and changing, but still keeping the true kind of brand going. And have you noticed any, I'm interested to hear your thoughts and differences between the guitars that were made in the early days to now, and how it's possible to, are you trying to keep things consistent, or are you trying to change things and make the guitar better? What are your thoughts on that whole discussion?
The thing is our guitars, and sometimes it just sounds like PR fluff when you say these things. And sometimes some of the things I say, it's like, oh boy, that just sounds like such the line. I'm not a bullshitter. I don't have a phony, thing in my body. We make better guitars now than we ever did. And it's just absolutely the truth because, when we were all building things by hand and making things just so, well, you get a slightly different version of that guy finishing out a guitar. You get a slightly different version of that guy. But, one day, with us in general, comes in the CNC machines. And now you're not doing shapers and routers and doing a lot of different things, a lot by hand, a lot with the old school ways, which are great. But you can't argue with the precision and the consistency of a CNC machine. I can't match that. I'm good at what I do. I can't touch that. And so you make parts better. You make components better. And then the whole ends up better. It just does by default. And the more that you can think of ways to make things more precise at a better pace, more efficiently, then you're able to make more guitars and you're able to make them better. So, handmade. Yeah, it's handmade. A lot goes wrong when you're hand making a guitar. Anyone who does it knows that. Unless you got the romantic looking out of your cabin, working a piece of wood within an inch of its life, that's not how you build a company and turn into Taylor Guitars. We had to, for the goal, we had to be faster, more efficient, better. And so we keep constantly, every single day, is talking about this machine. Could we get a scanner? Maybe we could get a scanner. Maybe we could get this. Maybe we could get something to do this job that hasn't been done before. It was kind of like a great example is when Bob Taylor went to see Tom Anderson Electrics, right? They're friends. Bob went to see him one day I think it was either 89 or 90, probably 89. Bob went to see Tom, and Tom had a Fidel machine, a CNC. And Bob came back. Walked into work the next day. He goes, I just saw the future of Taylor Guitars. I went, what? And he told us about this thing. And he immediately, even though it wasn't affordable, he bought one and taught himself how to use it as fast as possible. And that was a big turning point, especially in the acoustic industry. Nobody was using those machines. Everybody was using pin routers and all the old school things. And Tom, he one-upped it on his end, and that influenced Bob. And then we were the first ones to do that. And therefore, our guitars got better. They got more consistent. All the components were better, more precise, which, by the time you're done with a guitar, basically, you know what it really comes down to? We're all machinists working with wood. We think in machinist tolerances. We don't think in a 16th of an inch. We think in thousandths. To us, a lot is 5 thousandths. If it's off 5 thousandths, it's like, not good enough. We want it down to 2 or 3. And then we really think like that. Because Bob, a lot of people don't realize about him, he was the kid that won the little fairs when he was young for building a little tool or something like that. He's got a machinist engineer's brain that he brought to the love of guitar. So we're more like a bunch of machinists building guitars. And that's why we get into such high precision and consistency. And the consistency is stellar because of that. So he was much more than a guitar maker. He's an engineering brain and with a love for tooling and machines more than guitars, because the guitars can only get so good based on the tools and machinery behind it.
How do you maintain consistency across, like a global scale? Because you're not just making things in the States, you're making things abroad probably as well on the cheaper guitars.
Yeah, well, yeah. Cheaper, a relative statement. Still not cheap, but yeah, we wanted to. We started going across the border to Tecate, exploring that whole thing. It's been about probably 17 years now, and that was tough because we had to bring our culture there, and how we do it is all of the guys. People like me and dozens of others spend a lot of time going back and forth because they're only an hour apart. Going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Bringing the people from Tecate up and training them at our in El Cajon. Get them going, get everything in place, send them back there. Okay, now you got this, go do that. And it's incremental. This process, that process. we're all like one big company operating together an hour apart. It's really not different. We're making the guitars the exact same way, the exact same tools, with the exact same methods, just different people. And so we're able to do the same thing down there. And a lot of time and effort is spent with everybody going back and forth and interacting every day, whether it's a call like we're doing right now and discussing something we have to work through. But yeah, it's a constant. It's really just one company functioning on both sides. It's not different. I'd like to say I mean, their culture as a society, as a people, individually is different. But when it comes to the guitars, everything comes into the Taylor culture umbrella, and we all operate the same.
But the budget guitars at Taylor they're fantastic, and that is probably part of the reason.
Yeah, it really is, because there's a lot of effort put forth for them to be the same. And it's the methods aren't different down there. They're exactly the same.
Like, you must have a lot of, a few stories of people you've worked with in the past, or, whether it's artists or other engineers, or you must have some, a couple of funny stories of instances that are worth kind of reflecting on, I guess.
Well, I mean, there's comical stories, there's the bunch of young immature guy stories in a shop, from pulling pranks on each other, to finally where Bob one day goes, okay, it's got to stop. Okay, guys, you're having a lot of fun. I walk out of my department one day, and what happens? I open the door and it triggers a bucket of water to soak me, right? Just, we had a couple years of hilarity, of pranks. It didn't stop us from being serious about what we did. But, Larry and I, boy, he'd hate me for saying this. Larry and I would go out and have some drinks and shoot a round of golf, and then we'd come back and work till 1 a.m. And it's just, and I mean, really, when it was that young, Larry and I were working in our bare feet. We had a pair of shorts and our bare feet and making guitars, and the music's blasting loud, and Bob's just kind of like, oh boy. It's like, if you guys weren't so good at what you do, Yeah. Is almost like, he was like our age, but he was almost like tolerating these kids because he was so much more serious than we were. We were serious about the guitars, but he was serious about business. And occasionally he had to, put the lid on the out of control kids out there just having a good time, because we needed a little comedy relief, because we were working insane amount of hours to get where we wanted to go. And, you get behind, and I mean, 12, 13, 14, 15 hours a day, you need a little comic relief. And so just from all the pranks that we would pull on each other, and which were just crazy and many, I mean, it gets ridiculous at times when we were real early. A guy goes to grab a screwdriver and it's jet glued down, super glued down. Just, don't kill me, Bob, for telling the stories, but it's, we had a lot of fun, and we had some aching times, where all of a sudden we couldn't get tuners, and here we are just struggling to get by. They're struggling to pay bills. And we got 120 guitars sitting because we don't have tuners. It's like, well, we're not going to get paid for a few weeks here. So, just, I remember one of the things that was real funny about Bob was, we had a guitar that we were doing, so, you're doing a few repairs too, but we had this truss rod we had to get out of a neck. And I was just standing there thinking of all my old Lutheran, conventional ways. How am I going to get this truss rod out of this neck? And Bob walks up, he goes, oh, it's easy. He goes, so I'm following him out to the parking lot thinking, what's this guy going to do? He is one innovative guy. We walk out in the parking lot, pops the hood on his car, puts some jumper cables on his battery, and puts a rod on each jumper cable and hits the end of the truss rod with it. Truss rod gets red hot, grabs the end with a pair of pliers, pulls it right out. He goes, there, that's how you do it. And I'm just standing there going, yeah, okay.
Oh, I've never heard that before. That's incredible.
Oh,
That's
man.
so
And I
fun.
mean, he was good for stuff like that. He was never without an idea of how to get out of something fast and easy. He was one smart dude. Oops, my phone's ringing. Sorry. So I don't know, or Larry and I working side by side one day, just putting guitars together and working our bare feet as we always did back then. And I remember Larry just he just said the word ow. He goes, ow. And I look over at him, and there's an X-Acto blade sticking straight out of the top of his foot.
Oh, God.
And Larry is so calm, even that didn't make him jump. He just looked down, he goes, ow. And I look at him, I go, you going to pull it out? He goes, yeah, I guess I should. Super sharp one, just bing.
Yeah.
But again, we walk in the next day in our bare feet. Like, whatever.
Are you involved in designing guitars for artist series or signature series?
That was always Larry's thing. Larry was always the one that would. I was the guy that could. I was the little storm of getting the guitars put together, getting them put together exactly right, making sure everything played perfectly, making sure it was everything we wanted to be. That was my deal within the company from day one. And because Bob would inspect my guitars for weeks on end, he goes, I can't find a single thing wrong with your stuff, So I became that guy.
Yeah.
And then that was a job to do because now I had to herd and make sure every single guitar was perfect every day, all the time with everybody and their work of getting there. And so a lot of retraining on my part and showing him my methods of how I did things fast and efficiently and still get the result. Breedlove was the guy, along with Bob, that was always coming up with the ideas. And Larry was super creative and super talented as an artist. And so when it came to ideas and inlays and artsy things, that was Larry. Because he could smoke anybody on that side of things. He could draw, he could paint, he could sculpt. His master's was in furniture design and things like that. So he brought that to Taylor. So that was his thing. And then, later on, years go by, Larry leaves about 6-7 years ago, and then Bob brought in a younger guy, Andy Powers, to be that guy. And I'm still the guitar watchdog at Taylor to this day. I'm still the one that keeps an eye on all the specs, makes sure they're coming out exactly how they're supposed to. Still to this day, that's my role.
What's the hardest thing to get right, Terry, when you're looking at guitars? What's the thing that's the most nerve-wracking, I guess?
Well, it's making sure the neck angle is exactly where it should be all the time. Because that's a big, huge key to a guitar's geometry, to its stability, to its future stability, to how it feels, to how that neck angle is everything. Along with the sand out, I constantly, along with the engineers, constantly improving the fretboard plane, the sand out, therefore the fretting fallouts. Because if you've got that neck angle spot on, you have this beautiful fret job. And then, you get we set the action where we set it. But if the neck angle in that plane of the board is exactly where we want it, you just pop a saddle in, string it up, and it's exactly a Taylor guitar. So I would say the hardest part, and I don't know if I'd call it hard because we kind of have it down, but that's always one of the key things to a guitar, an acoustic guitar, that neck angle, the plane of the fretboard, the playability, the fret job. Those three things are the magic, because anything you do to an acoustic guitar, if you don't have that neck angle right, the plane of the fretboard right, and that fret job, if those aren't all stellar, everything else you did falls apart. Everything. So, everything else is important, like glue. Glue's really important. You don't want, you got to have glue. Glue's got to do its job for a guitar to stay together for 100 years. And so, I don't know if I'd call it the hardest part, but I'd call it the most critical part. Those three elements. And then if you nail those three things, the consistency is just going to be there. It's just going to fall in place. And we have that down to, when we set our neck angles, we have 2,000ths increments that we set them in. So we're able to get our neck angles exactly where we want them, right to the tolerance of 2,000ths. That's our tolerance. That way they come out almost exactly the same. You literally get about a 5,000ths tolerance. That's your window of your neck angle. And that's a piece of paper is 3,000ths. So we give you 5. And it is, and I'm serious. That's how exacting it is. If you're off more than 5,000ths, the neck angle is not in the right place.
It must be a blessing almost that you can use machines to be that precise nowadays. And do you find that machines still make it fun to make guitars?
Yeah, they do, because the craft doesn't go away. You still have to have, you still got a guy at a bench that's the one putting that guitar together. He's the one putting that neck on, setting the neck angle. He's the one that's, doing the nut, the saddle work, of that final geometry of it going together, because that's critical. I mean, you have to do all those foundational things, building a body, putting on the braces, but all those foundational things of the plane of the fretboard, the fret job. But in the end, it's still old world craftsmanship, where you have a room of people and they have to put the neck on the body. They have to dial in that neck angle. They have to get it exactly right. They do the nut work, the saddle work, and the final action, the playability. So in the end, it still takes a craftsman to make it what it is. The machinery helps you get there, but the craftsman has to make it what it is in the end. The machine doesn't put it together. That's going to be a human forever. Robots don't put guitars together. I mean, the money it would cost to build a robot to do that, forget about it.
Have you ever come across an instrument that struck a chord with you, like something that, like an old model that you'd worked on, or like what's the kind of memories of guitar making for you?
I'm a professional guitar player. I travel, weekend warrior, play guitar professionally. What's interesting about it, when you're just a guitar player and you're not involved in lutherie, you're not involved in building, you really get stuck on what you like. I mean, it's natural, and I was that guy. You get stuck on, I'm a Les Paul guy, that's it, and a Marshall, I'm good. And one of the things that changes as you become either a repair guy or a builder, all these other flavors start coming in. Rosewood, mahogany, maple, walnut, ovenkol. It's endless, and yeah, the cocobolo, the wood names are growing as the years go by and supplies change. But you're doing so many different guitars and you're hearing all these different cool sounds. It gets to a point where you might still have your favorite, but there's a million reasons to like all these other guitars, right? Kind of like, well, as you grow into being a guitarist, you find the great things about a Strat, a Tele, an SG, a Les Paul. There's greatness in all of them. And then as you get into acoustic guitars and you're designing, building all these others, the same thing happens, where that one's darker, that one's brighter, and they all have a place and a reason to be, depending on your likes. I still have I'm a mahogany cedar guy. Ever since we built a guitar of that combo years ago, I fell in love with that sound, and it just still gets me to this day. We all have a sound that we love, and that one gets me. But all the others are just as good for different reasons, and we all like different things. I don't think any two guitar players would agree on each other's tone. Everybody's got a different sound that they go for in their head. And it's not really a lot different with acoustic sound. There's something for everybody, depending on how you play, how you attack, what you're trying to get out of it. They all have a reason, and they're all great, although you could get together and argue that yours is better, but no, not really. It's kind of like, oh, Carlos Santana, Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck. Well, everybody likes a different guy for a different reason. They get affected by their sound or how it hits them. And that's the beauty of guitars. They're all good.
Have you ever been able to meet any of, not really your heroes, but people that you admire as players as part of the job?
Yeah, you go, that's a hard question. It's kind of, yeah, you've got all these years in and you've met just tons and tons and tons of people that cross your path.
Which people surprised you, Terry?
Generally, I'd say you end up getting surprised by all of them because they all throw you. You meet them and you have expectations. You meet somebody super famous and you have an expectation, and then you meet them and go, oh, wow, they're just so much different than you think they're going to be, whether it's personally, whether it's professionally, whether like if you go back to the 90s with a guy like Clint Black that had 19 number ones, it's a trip. And he was super famous there for a while. He had a lot of hits and he had a hell of a streak. But what's funny about these guys, what's great about it is you get together with them one-on-one and they pick up a guitar and they're playing Zeppelin. Or, they're always, I don't know why it is, even all the country guys, they pick up a guitar and they start playing Zeppelin. They start playing AC/DC. They play a Kiss song. It's like you guys are like all rockers that ended up country people. It's just a trip. I never forgot the time I was sitting there with that lead singer guy from Alabama. I forget his name. It was a long time ago. And they were one of the first big bands that, started playing Taylors. And I'm sitting with him in a hotel room in Nashville. And he starts just detuning this whole guitar. He's doing this whole tuning thing. I was like, where's this guy going, And he starts playing that Black Country song from the first Zeppelin album in Dadgad. And I'm going, okay. And I'm still sitting there going, and he's a phenomenal guitar player. I'm used to him strumming chords in Alabama. He's up there front. And he picks up a guitar and starts playing all these alternate tunings and nailing everything he does. I'm going, this guy's a phenomenal guitar player. Nobody knows it, and nobody will ever know it, you know? And that's the fun thing about meeting a lot of these people, the dimensions to them that goes far beyond the personality of what you see. They're so much deeper than the pop song you see in the front. And that's the interesting part of meeting people like that. That's the fascinating part.
You just change your perceptions of them, and you just have a deeper understanding of where they're at and what they're doing things for, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. And I've met hundreds and hundreds. So, I remember Neil Young. He's the guy you can't get to. Nobody can get to that guy. Bob can't get to Neil Young. Nobody can meet Neil Young, He's that guy that's not coming out and meeting anybody, period.
Yeah.
So, we're right there, we deliver the guitar. We're on the stage, checking out his gear. Nope, he is not coming out.
So funny. That's you'd expect you to have. Yeah, I don't know. I'd be surprised.
Or the time, when I went to meet with the Allman Brothers, and I get there, and God bless Warren Haynes. That guy saved my night, because you get there and you realize quickly that, separate buses, and these guys aren't liking each other right now. Nobody's coming out of their buses. Nobody wants to interact, on the stage, play, bye, And that's some of the more interesting things, but it's called a band, and bands are like families, and families fight. And Warren Haynes kind of navigated me through all of it that night. Greg wants a guitar. Okay. I got to meet with Greg. That was cool. He gave in. He gave in and taught guitars. So yeah, just lots of fascinating stories over the years. It's fun and it's interesting.
You're obviously a player. You've mentioned that a couple of times, and obviously, how's your mentality changed from when you started playing guitar as a younger guy and to now? Has it changed, or have you stayed true to some things?
And I guess it might be the Detroit in me. A lot of people get older and they lose that fire that made them want to play when they were a kid. And I've seen that happen to a lot of people. And I don't know, maybe it's a Detroit culture, but me, and even though I'm out here for years, me and a lot of my Detroit friends, some reason a lot of the players in Detroit don't lose that fire. They never lost that desire and that fire to prove themselves, to play better, to give it all they got. It's just like, with rock stars, that first album will come out and it's like, whoa. But then it kind of goes softer from there.
I don't know if it's because bands have, I always thought it was that they spent so long crafting the songs and playing the songs to death for the first album.
That is a part of it. And they're so much hungrier before they get rich.
Yeah.
And one of the things I love about Taylor is after the success and the wealth of whomever, the desire and the hunger doesn't go away. The fire's still there. Bob still walks in every day, kind of just like a zealot of new ideas. Okay, here's what we're going to do. He's just on fire. He never lost it, and it's cool. For me personally, now I never lost that fire, that desire to do better, figure it out, excel, grow. Don't just sit still. It's no fun.
I think being able to do something that you're so passionate about for a living really just is the thing everyone's trying to do. But in terms of the guitar playing and trying to keep interested in it, I think there's I don't know. I think it depends on why you started in the first place, I guess, and and maybe who you've had around you? Has any of that kind of factored in to you keeping that fire? Has it been more self-driven? And how have you made that happen, I guess?
Yeah, I don't know. I had the Scottish. I'm Scottish, and my family is all my relatives, all my family in Scotland are all players, and everyone in the States didn't play at all. And so I was like, well, I definitely got that side of the pond because they all play. They play bass, they play guitar, they play drums, they play keyboards. They're musicians, and they just live it, they breathe it. And I think that's in the DNA. I don't know. I guess that's where it came from for me because it was there when I was two. My parents, they couldn't get records out of my hand. It was just music was everything, and I guess we're all wired a certain way. And there was no reason to be that way. It was just there. And my parents, that's why they put a lock on the stereo. I kept breaking it because I was too young to navigate it, so I'd ruin it. Right? It's just certain things are just I don't know, they're innately in you and you don't know why. And then you get old and go, I don't know. It's just there the whole time. It wasn't a choice. It was just there.
Yeah, I just wondered because I'm the same. I'm younger, but like I can't explain it. Like there's always that drive, that passion to pick it up, to play, to learn, to progress. And it's not that you're always trying to get technically, I don't know. I had a bit of where I didn't technically progress too much, but I would switch to more like songwriting or like writing, singing more. And it's just the music, that backbone driving. I don't know. It's weird. I can't explain it because I know people that just don't want to touch the thing, don't want to learn guitar. They find it so hard, but it just came so easy. Not the guitar playing, it was more the drive to just keep going, going, going. And I don't know how you'd kind of tell someone that. I think it's just within you, like you say. And I don't know, it's difficult to put it down to something in particular.
Yeah, it really is because I mean, my wife's as passionate about music as me, but she looks at a guitar like it's a foreign language. Like, I don't know how you do that. I don't understand how you could ever do that. I've tried. I don't have it. I can't do that. But they're just as passionate, right? And so, I guess certain people are born for certain things. I don't know if I'll ever understand that or why it happens that way for certain people. Just like these little prodigies, you know, 6, 7-year-old kid just ripping on YouTube, and you're just like, geez, you know, or some 4-year-old just like ripping on a piano, playing some beautiful classical piece, and you just it just makes you wonder about genetics and why those things happen, where they come from. And that scientists, that's a mystery. You're not going to solve that one. Why is this kid able to do that at 4 years old? Why? Where did that kid come from? Where did that brain come from? Why? How can that happen?
Yeah, it's baffling. It's baffling. It really is. And
yeah, and you just look at that and you go, that had to be there. It's just in his wiring. I don't know why.
It doesn't really make sense. And yeah, I don't know. It makes you go, oh, for God's sake, all the time I put into doing it and learning it.
Yeah, it's like, this was hard for me. It was natural to want to do it, but to be able to do it wasn't that easy. Not like that. Nobody ever called me a prodigy. I wasn't good till I was in my 20s.
Well, that's the route everyone takes. It's hard to stick at it when it can be so hard to start with. I mean, just even cracking through those initial bar chords and stuff like that, even that was a mountain to get over. And do you have any tips and things you've kind of realized over the years playing the guitar, like almost not epiphanies, but along them sort of lines that you would maybe share?
I was just talking to somebody about this the other day. There's a great thing There's a Paul McCartney special out right now, 321 McCartney. Everybody's talking about it.
Yeah.
There's an episode in there. I don't know, it's the fourth, fifth, or sixth one. He talks about how he learned piano, the method of how he went about learning it, little step at a time. And I was actually pretty blown away because I thought, if I went with what he's saying right there, I could learn to play piano with fairly easy and at least get myself off to a good start. Because a lot of people, you get overwhelmed, especially you take lessons, you can easily get overwhelmed by the theory, everything going on there. You can easily get overwhelmed. But I think one of the things I would say for anybody is that it doesn't have to be that way. When my son was a little kid, I said, I'm going to show you 3 chords. You can write 100 hit songs with these 3 chords. You don't need to know anything more than these 3, because the songwriting sounds, like a craft, and it's deep, and you have to have all this understanding. You got to write it. It's like Ian, it's just making stuff up. I said, I'm going to give you 3 chords. You could write, there's 1,000 hit songs with those 3 chords I just showed you. Just played in a different order with something else sung over the top of it. Just make stuff up. Just have a little fun. Make stuff up. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't overthink it. Just learn a few little chords. Just get good at those. Just bang them out. Bang them out on an electric guitar, loud and proud. Play them on an acoustic guitar. AC/DC, right?
Yeah, they're doing something right.
I took a great example would be for parents listening to this with your kids. I showed Ian 3 chords. I had a setup in my house. I had drums because I'm a drummer too, and I had a bass. And I had Ian and 2 of his friends. And I took one of his friends, put him behind the drums, never played drums in his life. I go boom, bop, boom, bop, boom, bop. That's all I want you to do. Hit the bass drum and then hit the snare. Bass drum, snare. And I put Nick, his other buddy, on a bass, and I said, just play this note. Dun, 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 dun. Just that's all you do. Just play one note. Keep hitting that note. And I told Ian, now play your 3 chords while they do that. And I took a video of them. And it was an AC/DC song. And they sounded killer. 3 little kids sounded killer together. I said, you hit, and I took a video and I went, there it is. I said, you guys just played a song and none of you know how to play. You don't even know how to play. And you guys just played an AC/DC song. And so it can be that simple. If you don't get overwhelmed by all the stuff, you don't have to learn to be Yngwie Malmsteen. You don't have to. You can be great with 3 chords.
Is that something you realized over the years, Terry? Or
it's something I wished I had realized when I was young. Because if I thought like that when I was young, I probably would have made it. If I realized that coming up with a tune is really that simple. But you're overthinking it when you're young. You're thinking about all this stuff. You've got all these songs from all these bands, and they're so good, and they're playing so off the charts. And then AC/DC comes along and goes, bum, bum, bum. And it's a hit song, right? So if I had only thought like that when I was a kid, you would have gotten further with it, because you would have understood that you don't have to learn all this lineage of stuff to put together a tune. You could have been sitting with your buddies coming up with cool stuff by just plucking a note and having your buddy hit a snare. And you don't even know how to play, right? Like I could come up with a killer mandolin part for a song. I can't play a mandolin, but I can come up with a part for a song, right?
Yeah, no, it's so true. I don't know if like having limitations and restraints, I know you're not talking in that sense, but when you've got only a certain amount of tools to play with, it makes you more creative with what you've got, I think.
It's an old adage, less is more.
Yep.
But if I was able to take three kids like that and make them sound really cool together, not being able to play anything, and then I put them through amps. They were playing loud. Sounded cool. Sounded really cool.
There's so much to be said for playing in a band. That's playing with other people and musicians. I think the earlier you can do that as a player, the better. I think you learn so much more from that environment, just mucking around with friends and playing, being... I just love the feeling of playing loud, to be honest. And when I was younger, drove me a lot. But like I feel that people nowadays are more tempted to stay in their bedroom, look at YouTube and play to themselves and have the invent of the bedroom recording studio and all that. It's much easier to stay in your hole and play, but I feel that people are missing out by not doing it the old-fashioned way.
That human interaction is everything. And a big, huge thing, and it gets talked about here and there, is you've got Pro Tools, you've got all these exacting things and click tracks. And that's the way everybody operates now because, well, it's efficient, it's easier, it's more efficient. Everybody plays in time. But if you go back to all the bands that still sell out stadiums, there were no click tracks. They played in the time they played. The songs slowed down a little. They sped up. The intention was to play them at the same speed, but they naturally slowed down and sped up at certain times. And that push and pull, that tension, that being on the edge is what made that music. And so it wasn't perfect. And the imperfection is where a lot of the magic was, because just like what you're saying, human interaction made those great songs. And it's not arguable. Human interaction brought that magic. The songs that are iconic to this day, that's human interaction. More than even being a player. That's human interaction that caused that. And sitting in a bedroom with, even if it's Pro Tools, you're not getting the push and pull. You're not getting the on the edge. It's all in perfect time. And it can't come out the same. If you put the Beatles on a click track, would they sound like the Beatles? No way. You put the Zeppelin on a click track, you'd go, wow, this band's kind of okay. All that tension wouldn't be there.
It loses the soul.
Well, yeah, and a lot of us just call it the soul, which is, I call it that too.
I mean, I write from home now more than I have done. Just, I don't know, the pandemic kind of did make me do that a bit.
Yeah.
But like, I just don't feel as comfortable. I find it a lot harder than having a drummer to bounce off, bass player to bounce off, and just to really push ideas around. And I've always been a fan of writing songs in more of a jam format, and you go, oh, that's cool, let's do more of that, and then let's do more of this. But when you've got a blank sheet of Pro Tools in front of you, it's like, where the fuck do I start? Like, I just don't know.
Absolutely. Because every band you read about, they get in a room and they just start bouncing ideas, and that's where stuff comes from. And I call it getting out of your own head. When you get out of your own head is when the good stuff comes. If you're thinking too much, you're sitting in front of a computer with that, oh man, I sound like an old guy. I hate when I sound like this.
No.
But still, that human interaction and that getting in a room and bouncing stuff around, you're getting out of your head. You're not thinking. You're just flowing. And when you just start flowing and your fingers just start doing stuff, great ideas come from that. better than just sitting there thinking about, I got to come up with some riffs. Wow, if you just get in a room and start going, you just play guitar for an hour loud in your garage and just tape it. There's probably going to be 3 or 4 things that are super cool there that you're just playing something off the top of your head. And that's where the great stuff comes from most of the time. I mean, even songwriters that wrote their greatest songs always tell you it just came to me. I didn't plan it.
I've started doing that in recent years, maybe in the past 10 years, really, is playing the guitars, hitting record on my phone or whatever, and just playing, and then go back and go, well, that was good, that was good. I have this terrible thing where I also can't really remember what I've played sometimes. So he's just like, that was really good. And then 3 days later, like, what the fuck was that riff again? And then
every idea that I have goes on a phone, and I have hundreds of them. And I sent one to my son the other day, and he goes, that sounds like an old Bon Scott AC/DC song. And I went, well, this was just what my fingers did at the moment. And then I watched it back, and I was like, that's going to be hard to learn. I don't know what I did.
Yeah, well, I've started putting a video on now, and so because of that reason, because I'd listen and go, I don't know where the hell I was on the neck or what tuning I was in. I was like, fuck.
Yeah, the best thing about a phone to me in the whole world is being able to put my ideas down right away. And I do it at work all day. I'll do some little thing, and it's like, record. Right? When you're around guitars all day, you just pick stuff up and play it. And sometimes it sucks, and sometimes it's like, wow, that was pretty cool. I got to pop that on the phone.
I believe you, Taylor, have done some interesting projects, like researching what kind of woods work well with certain guitars. And I'd love to delve into some of that, of what you could talk about.
Yeah, we just did 2 years ago. Yeah. We got with a guy named David Olson. He's a ear, nose, and throat doctor. But in college, his thesis was he was studying spruce, the sonics, acoustic qualities. And so he lived up there in Bellingham, Washington. He got to be friends with Steve McMinn, who has PRT Tonewoods, who supplies spruce to most of the acoustic industry. And he got talking to, now later here in life, he got talking to Steve about, sonic qualities of spruce again. They were neighbors. They got talking. It turns out David did his thesis in this. And so they got together and started talking. And David wanted to start this whole thing of, have you ever thought about investigating all the different spruce and all the different factors of spruce? And, naturally, Steve thinks about that, but Dave wanted to get into the science of it. And so Steve was kind of like, okay. So before we knew it, we have a close relationship with Steve. Steve and Bob have some businesses together where they own some forests, and full-on forests where they do harvesting and a lot of their future wood projects, planting, growing. So we got involved with it, and I became kind of the Taylor guy that got involved with them. And we did a whole, we built some guitars out of certain spruces with between the braces and the tops. We started doing all these combinations of different densities of spruce, different grain structures, different densities. David will, get into the science with the Q factor, all these, really getting in deep. And we made 8 guitars, and we did a full-on study. I did a blindfold test with a lot of players to see. We say, okay, let's put this density brace and top with this density brace and top, and then they were built all by the same people, all out of the same boards, and I put them all together so they'd all come out geometrically exactly the same. And then once that happened, then we did a blindfold test with a bunch of really good players. And then we had the mids, the whole lineage of tone. What do you like about this guitar? What do you not? From the openness to it, to the mids, to its sonic qualities. Does it sound open and live and loud? Does it sound a little subdued? Does it sound a little thin? And so we did this whole blindfold test where everybody played these same 8 guitars, and they brought in a ton of players. And we'd talk to them as they're playing, and we'd fill out our form and get their opinion. And we learned through that. I mean, I'm getting real general here, but I have to. But through that, we learned exactly what people gravitate to and what they don't. So then we went to the University of Dresden that does, they have a department there that develops sounds from everything to a dishwasher to a Ferrari. Does a Ferrari naturally sound like it does? No, that's created. That sound is created for the customer that expects a Ferrari to sound a certain way. How do we develop that, right? So, I mean, it's not computerized, it's not IT, but it's developed. And so when we went through the University of Dresden, we started working with Sebastian there, who was the head of the department, who develops these sounds for all these huge, iconic brands out there. It's like, okay, we want to do a test. So we went into an anechoic chamber there, and we recorded those same 8 guitars exactly the same way, with the same player playing it the same way, strumming it the same way, with the microphones that are so high end, it's off the charts. You can hear an ant crawl, walk up the wall. They had to stop once because I rubbed my finger on my jeans 25 feet from the mic. That's how sensitive they were. Sebastian's like, Terry, don't touch your jeans. Like, you kidding me? I'm 20 feet away. He goes, I can hear that. So we did all this audio recording of those same guitars, but we had one player do it exactly the same chords, the same way on each guitar. Then we did they did a listening study with people over in Germany. And what was really interesting, from people in El Cajon, California, Taylor, just playing them in a room and telling you what they thought about it, to recording it in an anechoic chamber, which is taking it to the hilt. It doesn't go any further than that.
Yep.
And then having people do a listening test based on that whole study. And the ironic thing was, the results were exactly the same. People gravitated to the exact same thing scientifically as they did in practical application. It was a mind blower. And then what that does, that helped define, okay, this kind of spruce has this spruce and this bracing. This has this exact sonic quality. This has this sonic quality. So then when you're selling spruce and supplying it, you know exactly what spruce does what based on what that builder might want, what he's trying to achieve, because it's all good for different reasons. Certain aspects of spruce and bracing will, maybe it takes that guitar, it sounds a little subdued, it takes it a little while to open up. But it will, through time, vibration. Some of them just sound loud and open and big right off the bat. But they all have, like any guitar tone, they have a reason to be. And everybody likes different things for different reasons. People like dark and dry sounds. People like really super trebly, bright, sparkly sounds. And so, what the goal was to try and decide what do people like about certain species of spruce. Whether it's wide grain, tight grain, high density, low density. What's the verdict? And people all gravitated all the way from Germany to a scientific study to practical application came out exactly the same. We did not expect that. And so it allows PRT Tonewoods to know, okay, sonically, we can now define things a lot more than we used to based on maybe what an independent builder wants. Now, if you're Taylor Guitars, you're building 1,000 guitars a day, you use it all. And you use it all for different reasons and different models, and it all has a reason to be, because just like with a Les Paul, you might hate that Les Paul, and your buddy, it's like, this is the best Les Paul I've ever played. Or he comes in and he goes, I hate your guitar sound. It's like, well, I can't stand your guitar sound, but that's what makes you sound good. This is what makes me sound good, right? So in the end, it's all good, and you can be like a whole team. You know how guitar players or luthiers, everybody will argue about they're the best. They know the best way. This guitar player is better than this one. His sound sucks. His tone is unbelievable. This guy's sound sucks, right? But in the end, it's all good. It all has an audience. Everybody likes different things. But we can kill each other about, our personal opinions.
That's so powerful, Terry, isn't it? That research, to have that knowledge, to be able to really define, and the way it all lined up with the small group and then the wider mass testing. I don't know. That's crazy to have it all kind of work.
Yeah, it surprised us. We thought it would be all over the place, and then we'd define it from there. But the study didn't take near as long because everybody agreed across the board from Europe to here. They all liked and disliked the same things.
What is the common guitar misconceptions that you've kind of heard over the years that, oh, this does this to the guitar and oh, that does that? And what's the bullshit you've heard over the years?
I don't know if this answers the question or not, but you go back to when a guy like Eddie Van Halen comes out, or a Tom Scholz before him. Tom Scholz was a big deal before Eddie, his sound. He had a sound that nobody had before. So everybody wants to sound like them. Everybody wants to get that sound. And the misconception, you get people, the manufacturers that hate me for, maybe I shouldn't say this. But you've got all these, everybody starts buying pickups. They buy a certain guitar. They buy certain pickups. They buy a certain amp. They buy a certain pedal. They buy certain chords. They go down the rabbit hole of wanting to sound like this guy. And they buy gear like crazy, which we all love. But in the end, it's like, you can't sound like them because you don't play like they do, right? If you want to sound like them, you have to play like them, And that's one of the bigger misconceptions out there. It's a known thing these days. It's more known that, 70% of your tone is in your hands. You're not going to sound like that guy unless you just study and go down the rabbit hole and want to play exactly like him and capture his feel, his attack, down to every little nuance of his playing. How easy is it to sound like Eddie Van Halen? Not many people can do that. Even when they copy him, still don't sound like him. You nailed it, but you still don't sound like him, And so that's one of the bigger misconceptions that I've seen over the years, and of that whole gear thing where you want to sound like somebody and you buy all their gear and you don't sound like them. It's like, just focus on buy a ton of gear, have fun with it, but focus on going after your own thing, because it's going to be pretty difficult if you want to sound like them.
Oh, it's impossible. It's I didn't expect that answer, Terry, but it's a very good answer. Like I didn't think of it that way, but that's so true. Like I've never gone down that rabbit hole, if I'm honest. I have inspirations and people I look for just listening to, and but I was never the person that learned songs note for note. I wouldn't even do that. I would just kind of learn the feel, the scale, and kind of just get around it. Sure, when you're playing, professional cover songs live, you have to do that. But for in terms of me aiming towards a certain thing, it was always quite natural and loose and go with the flow and not really finding a sound, but I don't know, just having fun with it. And I think it's easy to forget that and just get obsessed.
Yeah, it's like people. I want to buy this pickup because I want to sound like this guy. It's like, good luck with that. Good luck with that, because that guy can sound like him no matter what he plays through. Eddie's going to sound like Eddie no matter what he plays through. And I wrote an article about it years ago in a magazine called Guitar Shop in the early -- about that whole thing, And, Ted Nugent back then Ted Nugent had played through Eddie's rig one time at a sound check. It's like, I sounded exactly like me. I didn't sound anything like him. It's like, well, duh. But, before a lot of people realize that, it's just go after sounding like you. It's not going to stop people from buying gear. We're all gearaholics.
Well, it keeps you in the job as well, doesn't it, Terry? So.
Yeah, well, we love guitars. We love pedals. It's never ending for me. I can buy 1,000 pedals and 20 different amps, and I sound exactly like me. No matter what I do.
What gear have you got rid of that you kind of regret now? Is there anything, or are you pretty...
Yeah. Oh, man. I was in a studio today. I was in a studio all day today, and the engineer and I were talking about gear, because while the recording's going on and he's got a quick break, he's on Reverb looking for 69 Marshall Plexi, and we're all laughing about it. But the funny thing, I told him, I said, I had Plexis to the ceiling. I bought and sold so many of those, and the old Marshall cabinets with the metal handles on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I said the amount of Marshalls and cabinets and gear that I had back then, it's a mind blower to me what it's worth now.
Yep.
But you don't know that when you're young.
No.
You don't know that. I had at least 20 different cabinets, at least 20 different heads. I had them all, the Marshall Major, the PA head, the Plexis,
mm-hmm.
with the metal switches, the plastic switches, and we were laughing about that. I said, if I kept everything I owned when I was young, I wouldn't be working right now. I would have retired on all of it. So regrets? Oh, man. Regrets by the dozens, The Echoplexes, it goes on and on and on. The stupid pedal you had that was useless to you that now goes for $700, $800, just a pedal. The regrets are insurmountable when you're old as me and you've owed that much gear. You sold off millions of dollars of gear for nothing, but you didn't know it.
No, it's so funny. I had a friend that reminisced about selling his, I can't remember what year it was a 60s Strat, and he had it for about 3-4 years, and then was skint, had no money, and was at university, and he bought it with all his loan that he got for university, and then 3 years later he got rid of it, and it's like the guitar's worth thousands now, and he's just like, what the fuck did I do that for? Like,
yeah, I know. It's like a 59 Les Paul. I played in bands. I didn't have one. I didn't like a fat neck back then, the fatter neck. But I played in bands with all of us. Literally, we were all playing 50s Les Pauls. We all played 50s Les Pauls. Those were old and cheap. They were old and cheap. You could buy them used at a great price. You know, we were all playing 50s Les Paul Juniors and guitars, gold tops with trapeze tailpieces on them. That was the guitars we all played in bands with. We all had that stuff. Who knew? You know, we had a gold mine.
Yeah.
And it was, and you know, and you'd make a joke, it'd be like, why don't you get rid of that old piece of shit and buy a real guitar? You know, I mean, literally. It'd be like, why don't you go out and get get one of these Les Paul that just came out, it's killer. Get rid of that old piece of shit. This 50s thing you walk in with, you know? That's the craziest thing about it all. It's like, to the kids of today, sit on your gear, man, and buy more. Buy more. It's going to be worth a lot when you get my age.
Well, that's what I'm like. But I have a problem that I can't get rid of the fucking stuff.
Get a warehouse and buy fill your garage. Fill your garage with Strats and Les Pauls and Tellys. You won't be sorry. Just fill it. Buy every $500 guitar you can get your hands on.
That's funny.
You don't even need a 401k. By the time you're 64, it'll be worth $3 million. Easy.
I never even thought of that. That's
think of, yeah. If I had started doing that when I was at that age, I could have stockpiled 50s Les Pauls all day long because I was paying more for my 70s Strat.
I didn't mean to bring back such bad memories, Terry. Sorry.
No, it's actually hilarious because it's a good lesson to the young and, listen to the wisdom of the old. Here, these guitars, nobody cared about them back then. And don't forget, the Les Paul didn't sell and they stopped making it.
Yep.
Don't forget that. That thing died. It was a dud. Didn't sell. They eliminated it and the SG became the Les Paul.
Yeah, I remember listening to, it was a couple of years ago, but there's an audio book called The Birth of Loud, I think it's called. And it's like, I don't know if you've heard it or listened to it, but it's
I have.
It was incredible. I loved listening to that book. It was like, because I wasn't around at the time, but like, well, just hearing the whole story of the whole, the Bigsby story behind it. And it was awesome.
I read that. That's a great read. But yeah, it's anything old gets cool. Anything old gets cool. And and if you stockpile enough stuff, there's gonna be some ringers in there. There's just gonna be. There might be a few duds, but chances are there's gonna be a lot of ringers in there. Between pedals and amps and guitars.
I think you've changed my perspective within a couple of minutes here, Terry, I think.
Well, for any of the parents that listen to this, it's like, here's what you can teach your kids. Buy gear, store it. Keep it in good shape. Climate control, keep it in good shape. It's, guitars. One of the funniest things about guitars is that, you got that thing where wives hate when guys buy new guitars, right? Well, what people aren't thinking about is guitars. If you get the right deals and you work it good, guitars are just kind of like a rotating bank account. It's like a savings account that just rotates. You buy one, you sell one, or you buy more and you don't sell any, but it's still worth money. It's still worth what you paid for it if you're shopping correctly. You can get all your money back every time if you're shopping wisely, right? And you've got people that golf and spend a fortune on their hobby.
With nothing.
Or they buy cars and they spend these fortunes on hobbies, but the return isn't there. With guitars, the return is there, And so it's more like a rotating bank account. You're not just throwing money out. One of the greatest things when we were going to ideally meet Neil Young, we were bringing in one of his 70s Taylors because he was one of the first guys that played a Taylor. And on Rust Never Sleeps, Bob could not believe when he was a big Neil Young fan. He went to see Rust Never Sleeps, and he was floored. Neil Young's playing a Taylor. He's like, holy crap, he's unknown. Nobody knows who he is. Neil's up on a film playing a Taylor. And he's like, he's floored. He's floored. So there we are in line, and ideally we're bringing that Taylor back to Neil. We had to do some repairs on it. Well, of course, we're not going to get to meet Neil. We find out, of course. But the funniest thing was I'm standing in a line, and I'm making jokes about being a musician. And I said, this playing in bands and stuff, I think it equates to about maybe 35 cents an hour. I think that's what we make. We get paid for the gig and everything behind it. I said probably 35 cents an hour. And this guy taps me on the shoulder, and we're in the line going into Neil Young. He goes, "Did I hear you just say you made 35 cents an hour?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "I'm a golfer." He goes, "I spend thousands of dollars a year." He goes, "And you just said you made a profit." And I went, "Yeah." He goes, "You make a profit off your hobby." And I went, "I never thought about that." He goes, "You actually make a profit." I went, "Well, you sure made me feel good about 35 cents an hour." So here, it's worth a lot of it's worth more when you just sit on it. So it's not a bad habit. It's a pretty healthy habit.
No, I think so. Especially if you go down, the used market and you're buying something sensible and getting a deal, like you say. I think it's a safe bet almost, and it's better than renting a guitar or something. You're at least you're gonna get your money back at least most of the time. So.
It's like 59 Les Paul, you can get at least $350,000 for that right now. What's the next 59 Les Paul? It's probably hanging on the wall in your bedroom.
Probably, yeah.
You're 20 years old. It's hanging on the wall in your room right now. You just don't know it.
Oh, that's insane.
A guitar could be worth $500,000 when you're 60 years old. Is that the one? We don't know.
You fucking blow my mind there, Terry. I
don't know. That's why it's kind of with my guitars, it's kind of hard to part with them. I'm like, well, no, I might have a golden goose here still by the time I'm 80.
Yep.
I might still have a golden goose here. Right?
Do you know how many guitars you've got at the moment then, Terry?
A lot.
Right. Is it the 10 in the tens, the hundreds?
Yeah, I had over 100.
Right, okay. Wow.
About 90 of them.
Yeah, that's a good collection. I think you must find it hard when you're at work to not have a load of them, I guess.
Yeah, I have. There's places where they exist where, they're safe. You're not going to get much if you come in my house. You don't keep that many guitars and be stupid about it,
Yeah, no, I'm always conscious. If I go away, I hide them when I go away, and yeah.
Yeah, they're in safe places.
Yeah, treat them better than your children. Yeah.
Oh well. Okay, I'll give you a story. And back when in 1995, my son was. He was less than a year old. He was still in his crib. We had an earthquake. And, a tremor. It wasn't huge, but it was enough to go, whoa. Mm-hmm. It was a shaker. And Ian was laying in his crib. I'm like, he's fine. He'll get rattled around a little, on his mattress, but he'll be fine. I ran down the hallway because I had about 30 guitars on hangers in another room. I ran past his room down the hallway and took all my guitars off the hangers and laid them on the floor. I never heard the end of that. So the first thing you go for is your guitars. Okay, I see how it is. It's like, he's fine. He's in a crib with railings on it. It's not going to throw him out of the crib. But you know what? You never live that one down.
Oh God! Well, you did you must have given a glance on the way past in the blur.
I'd like to say I did. Even Ian at 27 years old laughs about that.
That's so
He's
funny.
like, I get it, Dad. I would do the same thing. Because he's a guitaraholic too.
Yeah. That's all right then, if he's okay with it. That's so funny.
He gets it. He'll probably do the same thing one day when he has an earthquake.
What's next for you? Like, you're playing in bands. What's next for you at work? Like,
yeah, I play in a Rolling Stones tribute band, Weekend Warrior. Travel out, do gigs wherever in the U.S. Work at Taylor during the week. Get on a plane, fly out, or do a road trip. Go play a tribute gig. You can't be the real thing. Might as well be a phony. Pays better than the clubs.
yeah,
So I'll take it. It puts me on the bigger stages with the lighting trusses and the nice PAs. It's not a bad. I got to dress up and be Ronnie Wood, so be it. I'm good with it.
That sounds good fun, though. I've never been in a tribute band, but I do. Yeah, some of the opportunities you get doing that, you like you say, it's just good fun, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought it was cheesy. I really thought it was campy and cheesy until I got asked to do it. And then it was like, well, I get to play on big stages with pro PAs lighting the whole bit. I don't have to bring anything but an amp and a guitar. Okay, I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
And before you know it, you're doing the whole thing, and it becomes fun because Pete's playing the bars. I got to play guitar. I get to do it at a higher level. It's really fun. And the people get to relive it, It's cool.
Yeah, it must be a nice place to be. I can't believe they're still around, actually. Normally a tribute band is gone, but they're still here.
Well, yeah, it's going strong as it ever was.
Yeah.
Even like Primus right now.
Mm.
Primus is a national act. What are they doing? Their tour right now, they're doing a Rush tribute. Have you seen that in the news?
No, I hadn't. No.
They're doing a Rush tribute, and Les Claypool went and got with Geddy Lee to see how he plays. Primus their whole tour is a Rush tribute. Wow. I was like, this is growing.
Yeah.
Because they're going, we're not selling seats anymore.
Yeah.
So we could probably sell out doing this.
Yeah.
Primus does Rush. And if we go out and nail it, isn't that bizarre?
Yeah.
I was sitting, one of my buddies, an old, mega rock star from the late 80s, the hair metal era. We were sitting having lunch last year. And we were talking about, the whole scene out there and everything. And he was just like, we're laughing about me doing the tribute. And he just says, he goes, what really sucks? He goes, you tribute guys are getting paid more than us half the time now. And I just sat there and I went, that's pretty ironic. And then he told me with some of his buddies, which are iconic names, he told me what they were making. And I went, wow.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
So, this Primus doing Rush, who knows where this can lead? Now you got a national act doing a tribute. Where's that going to go? Who would have thought, right? That's a first. And anytime there's a first, it gets copied. One person makes a chicken sandwich, everybody starts making a chicken sandwich.
Insane.
We come out with a GS Mini, everybody starts making their version of a GS Mini.
Yeah.
That's our biggest selling guitar. That guitar is off the charts in the world.
It is good though for the money. Like
it's a great guitar for the money. It's great. An adult can do a full-on gig with it. I have a couple buddies that actually gig with it, play nice venues, and a kid can learn on it. You know, it's a perfect crossover. And then this new GT we're making with a 24-inch scale, just a little bit longer. That's another level of the ultimate crossover guitar. So
it's quite a relatively young company.
Oh, very young.
How the name is just up there. You know, it's a lot. You think of it first a lot of the times for acoustic guitar. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on how that has come to be so quickly? Is it just Bob has driven that, or
Bob continues to drive it? He does. And Andy Powers is Bob's lead designer guy now, and Andy's on fire too because he's younger. He's a younger guy, and he has the talent, and he has the skills, and he's bringing all these new ideas that hadn't been done in the past. And so, you know, and the reason Bob wanted to get this young guy, because it's like, well, we're all getting old. We need a younger guy to come in here now and lead the way, because we can only get so old before we drop. What then? Right? You know, it's got to be handed off. So one of the things that causes us to be who we are, we never stop pushing. We never stop innovating, never stop coming up with something different, something new. And that's why we've passed a lot of people up, because it's just a nonstop goal every day to come up with new stuff, innovate, create. And I don't know. We're not thinking about it. It just happens. It's just a natural thing there.
Just in the blood. Yeah.
It's just a natural thing to think and be that way. And everybody's doing the same. Everybody every day is going, what about this? What about that? I got an idea. Throw it out. No, that sucks. Your idea is stupid. Whoa, there's a good one. There's a good one. You know, you just keep throwing stuff against the wall every day. You know, it's like a songwriter. You write 100 songs, you're going to get a ringer. And that's, if, you know, with us, it's just the minds are just going 100 miles an hour all day. Bob's the worst. That guy's so obsessive. Jeez, can't keep up with that brain. And Andy's thinking like a madman too. We all are. And we're all contributing to it, you know? So that's how we got here. And it doesn't stop. There's no ending to it, because we're all kind of a bunch of obsessive kind of guys that never stop wanting to throw stuff out. And yeah, there's a lot of bad ideas, but there's a lot of killer ideas. And we've got stuff. We got stuff that's going to come out 3 years out from now. But right now, it's just in the embryonic stage. We're always way ahead of ourselves. Do
you think the guitar is going to have a revolution? Do you think something's going to change substantially, or do you think it's just going to carry on similarly?
You know, that comes up a lot in a lot of podcasts you listen to and talk about. Bob Lefsetz, he's one of those guys that has a podcast that's always getting people from the music business talking about the future. He's always got producers, engineers. Nobody's positive where it's going. But I like to think right now there's a massive, the guitar sales are off the charts. And one thing I told Bob Taylor some years ago, and I stopped by his office one day and I said, I see something coming. I go, what I see is that guitar players, it's not going to be the boys club anymore. I think the future of guitar is going to be the girls club. He looked at me and I said, I think that's the future of guitars. And man, I'm watching it come true every single day. Man, is it coming true. More so than I even thought. And with that, with this influx of guitar sales and guitar players, I like to think that mainstream is going to finally maybe come full circle, and maybe we're going to have some guitar music again. What kind of guitar music? We don't know. But how can that many guitars get out there and guitars not dominate in the future? Guitars are selling more than they ever have. It's going to come back around. It has to. How can it not with the amount of guitar players out there? You know, right now it's getting, the music business is stifling guitar music a bit. But I think there'll be a full cycle thing in the future. I mean, the music business is a mess. Everybody knows that. But, you know, I mean, if you look at the whole music business, you had the 50s and 60s where every artist got ripped off blind, even into the 70s. They got ripped off so bad. Everybody made the money but them, right? And then you had the 80s and 90s and early 2000s where people were just, the late 80s and 90s to the early 2000s, people were making a fortune. I had friends that made, you know, fortunes doing that. It came back around where the profits were so good, everybody was getting rich, buying mansions and houses and cars. And now it's kind of going backwards again, where it's favoring, the money is being favored to the music, you know, the companies themselves, and it's not being kicked down to the artist. And I'm just waiting for somebody to come along, a Richard Branson type guy that's got so much money where it can get turned around again and the money's going back into the artist's pockets where it should go. And I think somebody will start it. Somebody will make it matter. Others will decide to join the club. I'm hoping, you know, fingers crossed. But the cycles in the history of music and the cycles would say that's what would happen again. Doesn't look good right now, but we'll see. Right?
I think your observation's spot on, Terry, with the amount of guitars that's been bought. I mean, I was trying to find like just a cheap Squire to give away as part of a Lola Pickups thing that we did together, and it took me months to find one. Like it was insane. All the used sites, everything was just, there was nothing out there. It was just insane. So I think just that notion that a lot of people are taking it up and will start to appreciate that kind of sound being present in the music, or maybe even write them. I think I'm as hopeful as you are, Terry. I think, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I mean, that Greta Van Fleet, everybody knows that was the, you know, just whether you liked them or not, it was the hope that, wow, a guitar band is getting paid attention to and getting national attention and selling out. And just need more of that, little by little, to come in and, you know, and get back to some basics. You know, Pro Tools is going to be there. You know, I'd love to hear like the Jack White. I love Jack White because he likes to, even he's getting a little more updated, but it'd be nice to get back to a little bit of that. Maybe they can come up with a digital version of that push and pull that made music great years ago, where it wasn't exacting. And I'm sure maybe there's a digital way to do that, but who knows?
Who knows? Well, Terry, thanks so much for coming to chat. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and yeah, it was good fun, hilarious. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, hopefully there's enough here to make something out of. If not, we had a good chat.
Yeah, it's been good. I had a good time regardless, Terry. But yeah, I think it's just great to get insight and experience from what you've done over the years so far, and how excited you are to carry on still. And
yeah, I haven't lost the fire at all. I'm still wondering what I want to do when I grow up. doesn't have an ending. It's like I'm gonna go at it fiercely till the day I drop. So, and that's you gotta live it and live out loud, man. Live out loud. Make it count.
Great words to end on. Thanks everyone for watching, and if you can hit subscribe and drop a comment below, that would be fantastic. But I will see you in the next episode of the Fret Success Guitar Show. Thanks.